G'day everybody and welcome to the 2011 Speight's Coast to Coast Web Seminars. This is number 4 of 6, a series of 6, celebrating the 30th anniversary of the Speight's Coast to Coast. Tonight's session is Support Crew 101. Brought along a Support Crew glass here. I don't know whether you can see that. The last few years these have been given to the Support Crew by Speight, so a handy little present there, filled with water on this occasion. Anyway, so tonight's session is Support Crew 101. As I mentioned, we'll be talking about the principles of success for Support Crew and a bit of a blow-by-blow account of a Support Crew's day. What's expected, we'll be covering things like the handbook and how useful that is, the equipment and how to be familiar with them. Bit of housekeeping first. As usual, we have the chat room, which is to your right, so it's not too hard to register. You've got to use a username and log in, and of course, if you've got any questions, we'll try and answer them as best we can. So, g'day Andre and Joe Blogs and Greg Jack. Good to see a few of you already there. So who am I? Well, in case you haven't seen any of the other 4 or the other 3 seminars, my name's Kelly Barber. I've done 12 coast to coast, a couple of 1 days, a few 2 days, a couple of the teams races, and made just about every mistake that can be made in the coast to coast. So I've learned a lot of things. I've never been support crew though in all my efforts. I was lined up to do it 1 year, but it didn't happen. I had something on with work. So anyway, I wrote a bit of a book about the coast to coast called Conquering the Coast to Coast, which a lot of people seem to enjoy. Because I haven't been a support crew, I'm very excited to invite along tonight my support crew chief for over 10 times. His name's Chris Middlemas. He's done the race himself. Father of 4 kids, great guy, a bit of an athlete, does a bit of cycling, and we've done a lot of orienteering events together, traipsed in the hills for many years. So I'm really honoured to invite my good friend Chris to come and sit down and join me tonight. Chris.
Thanks, Cal.
Welcome, mate. Good to see you.
Good to see you too.
Say g'day to the viewers there.
Howdy, everyone. Nice to see you. It's nice to be here and take a bit of the glory for a change.
Okay, so hey, look, it's great to have you here tonight, Chris. Just wanted to. So, what are you up to this year, as far as the coast to coast is concerned? Are you doing it, or are you helping out, or what's the story?
I'm not doing it. I probably need to do a bit more exercise at the moment, I think, to do that. But I'm helping out a mate, an old fella who's working on doing the 1 day, and looking forward to that. It should be a good time and a good chance to put the old support crew skills to the test again.
He is a bit of an old fella. He's actually in the background here as we speak in the studio. His name's Steve Neal. He's a good, keen young fella. Anyway, so okay, so you're helping out in the 1 day this year, and you've done that before a few times. You helped me at least twice in the 1 day, and in the 2 day quite a few times as well, didn't you?
Yep, yeah, indeed. Yep, and it's always been a lot of fun. I enjoy going on the support crew. It's great. It's a great way to get involved in the race and see a lot of very fit and energetic people doing the race, and you feel like a bit of a part of it too. So, yeah.
Was that what inspired you to do the race yourself, being support crew?
I think it was probably just that at the time my good mate, you, needed some help. Yeah, and I thought, oh, yeah, that sounds interesting. I think we talked about earlier in the year, you said you were going to do the coast to coast, and I was kind of a little bit interested, but wasn't really sure if I could do it, to be honest. And but thought, support crewing, that'd be fun and be good to go along and have a look. And it certainly was.
I hear people say that going along and helping a support crew makes them realise, how achievable it is, and seeing the race up close. Anyway, so I guess we were going to talk today about some aspects of being support crew, and one of the areas we agreed on was sort of looking at the principles of success. So some of the things that we'd talk about would be a race plan, and then timing and some of the equipment and understanding the race. So let's just talk about a race plan. Steve Gurney on the first webinar, and then Dallas Seymour in the second, and even Emily Miaska in the third, while talking about nutrition, all mentioned how important it was for them as athletes to have a race plan and to sort of talk things through. What have your experiences been you know, as regards to a race plan?
Yeah, you know, I agree. I think it's critical to have a race plan, and if only just so that the people, you know, there's often a few new people that come along, and nobody really knows the first time what they're doing. So it's great to have a few things written down, a bit of a plan on who's going to be where and who's doing what. Yeah. And that just helps people enjoy it a lot more. So it's a critical thing just to put some things down. I remember the first time, you know, that you did the coast to coast, and we were, you know, in the hotel over in Hoki the night before, and kind of wondering what the heck we're doing, and just writing a few of those bullet point things down at the time has been very useful and was great for that time.
Yeah. And how important is, you know, is competitor expectations? I mean, you know, you've got such a vast array of athletes, from people who want to do really well to people who just want to get through it. Got any thoughts around that?
Yeah. Well, I mean, one of the things from helping yourself over the last few years is, you know, different years, you know, I think you've probably had different ideas about how fast you want to go and how seriously we want to take the transition. So having, making sure we were on the same page of that was really important. Yeah. You know, I know I had a look at a few videos of Steve's guys, you know, Steve Gurney's crew doing it.
Oh, right.
And they always talked about being on the move, and you know, we talked about doing that at times, and I think having that communication was really critical. Sometimes we did, sometimes that was the plan to keep going, and sometimes the plan was just to sit down and work through the transitions in a more, you know, relaxed manner.
Yeah. Yeah, I do remember some of those early transitions where we weren't in a big hurry. We kind of wanted to kind of get things right from memory, right? And I seem to remember even sitting down on a stool, which was probably the style at the time. One of those early coast to coast.
I think we pretty much brought a stool along every single coast to coast, and you may have sat on it once. Yeah. I know the year I did it, I definitely sat on it. But
yeah. So having a race plan, I guess, was a good idea. And I know we did, you got me actually to write one out one year just to make sure that we included everything. And I've actually still got that at home. And that was actually quite good for planning purposes. So, okay, just talking about timing, another principle of success would be timing. So what do you think about kind of being early and actually being there? You know?
Yeah. Well, yeah, being there is always a good start.
Yeah.
So, I think, it's not too hard. The coast to coast, you know, organisation, the officials are really great at mustering people along and making it easy for you to get to the right place at the right time.
Oh, okay.
You know, the secret from a support crew point of view, you know, or the approach I've always taken in here is, you know, not to stop for cups of tea and sit down lunches and stuff like that, which I know, because the worst thing that you can kind of do for your support crew is not be, for your competitor, is not be there.
Yeah.
And I think one of the few years I haven't been in support crew, there was an unfortunate incident when the race plan changed. But,
yeah, actually that was one year when the race plan changed and they had to go to the alternate B course, and it was the last bike ride and they were going to kayak down the Avon River, and I think I waited for 13 minutes for the support crew to turn up. We ended up actually winning the teams that year, but it was an anxious time for me, standing on the riverbank watching the guy in second place go past and wondering whether I'd be able to catch him on the river. So yeah, and I have seen on the video a number of times people standing around yelling for their support crew. So I guess it's really important to actually be there.
Definitely, and it happens. You see it on the videos, and it's not like just one of those things that happens once in a blue moon. I think every coast to coast that I've been to, you know, at probably most transitions, there's been somebody yelling around looking for their support crew, one of the competitors getting stressed and wondering where people are. And I mean, it's a shame for anybody, whether, you know, you're a top 10 competitor or you know, or doing it to knock off the challenge. Okay, so yeah, important to be there. I guess that's a really crucial thing. Let's just talk about some of the equipment. I've always thought that I've had a real advantage with you as my support crew, because you've actually now, you know, done the race yourself, and you have the kayaks and the bikes, and you understand all the bits and pieces. How important is it, do you think, for people to support crew, especially first-time people, to familiarise themselves with the equipment? Yeah, I think it's definitely really handy. And I think probably if for the first time, the most important thing is you don't need to necessarily know how to take a derailleur off or anything, you know, too technical.
Yeah.
But being familiar with what is needed for each transition is probably the most important thing. And that's one of the things that, you know, we've always done is we've had 2 or 3 boxes.
Yeah.
And each time there's been the stuff for the next transition has gone in the box to make sure that nothing is missed. And I think being familiar with what is needed for the next leg of the event is probably the most important thing.
Yeah. Which would you say is the trickiest transition in terms of equipment?
Yeah, I've actually been having a bit of a think about that one, and it's easy to. I think it's the kayak to bike at the end, because and the main challenge is where you park and where you put the bikes and where the competitors come out of the water is so far apart. Yeah. So it's not. I mean, it's not super tricky or it's not rocket science or anything, but you've got to make sure that you've got the gear in the right place. If you're a little bit pushed for time there, you forget something in the car, it can be a long walk back up to the car and over and stuff like that. And especially if your competitors, towards the front, which often have the pleasure of that being the case, your time can be a little bit limited. So it's that's the one.
Well, that's interesting, because I would have thought that it always seems to be chaos to me when I come to the river. But it always goes well because, I've got to get into a spray skirt and a life jacket, put on the kayak shoes, and we know how important kayak shoes are, because if you come out, you really need to be wearing shoes in that river, as Chris found out once. If you're not wearing shoes, it's a really hard walking across.
It's painful.
To pick up your boat. So I, as a competitor, always thought it was the top of the river that was the most important. So you're saying like the difficult one is the bottom of the river before that last bike ride, and the difficulty you're saying is because the car's in a different place, and crucial.
You're right. And I think that other one is there's a bit more to think about, but you've got a lot of time there because you kick off like 5 o'clock in the morning. You're probably charging down there. We often have a wee kit down there while we're waiting for the race to start. There's heaps of time to get organised. So the time's not too critical there. Right. And there's a lot to do at that setup for the kayak, but there's heaps of time. It's been my experience. Yeah.
So just, I guess it's all about understanding the race. And like I say, you had the advantage of after the first time you were a crew, you'd actually done the next race. And then that must have helped a lot. How can people sort of familiarise themselves, people who are in support crew, familiarise themselves with the race?
Well, actually, one of the surprises I got the first year I helped was that there was actually a handbook. And so I think over at Hokitika we had a look through that. And having a look through the handbook, and particularly the thing I find the most useful, or found the most useful in the earlier first few times, was looking at the maps of the transition area and just having an understanding of where everything is.
I noticed you've got a copy of the handbook there. Can you sort of show that maybe up to the screen and just sort of show people what we're talking about? So this is the handbook that comes out every year. It has detailed descriptions of the transitions. It's actually got checklists of everything that you might need as a support crew member for your athlete, and you might not have everything on the list. I mean, maybe if we could sort of show that list there. This is the sort of thing that I'm talking about. I don't know whether you can read that, but it's got sort of check boxes, which is, I would have thought would be really handy, and I was really impressed when I actually when I read that and saw that they were there. I mean, have you found that?
Yeah, definitely. I think the first year, I'm not sure if they had the checkboxes and stuff, and we made our own list, or we made our own list anyhow. They definitely had the maps. The maps are a lot better these days. I've done a bit of orienteering, and I remember looking at them the first year, and I couldn't work out what was what. But this year, the last few years, they've been to scale and everything, which is fantastic. The guys have done a great job there. And you've got the checklist. And I definitely have used these in the last few years as well. Yeah, just to make sure that things are in the right boxes. It's a handy tick off. So.
Okay, so what would you think, Chris, would be the right number of people? Say the minimum number you would want for support crew, and what would be the maximum? Because I know I've seen people like Steve Gurney with 5 or 6 people. I saw Nathan Fa'avai once with, it seemed like half the people following the race with his support group, he had one person just for the paddle, you know.
Yeah, yeah.
So, I mean, what's the minimum and what do you think is kind of like a comfortable number?
Well, I know, you know, I've heard about people having like one, you know, support crew, and I think that would be just not enough, you know. It would be quite stressful, particularly for the day two, if you're supporting a 2-day competitor, where you've got to have, you know, someone at the beginning of the race and someone down at the kayak. So you need, absolute minimum, I think, is 2. You know, 3 is nice, and if you can get 1 or 2 extras on top of that, then that takes the pressure off the support crew. So, yeah. Yeah,
well, I guess one thing that we've always done down at the river is it seems like there's a lot to do, and having a few extra people to steady a kayak is quite handy, because I've often said, excuse me, you know, can you help us? And that's always been something that I think is quite good. Even though we often have enough people there, it's you can, I feel like at the river it's always quite handy to have a few extra people, you know, to help out. Okay, so let's just move on to the race itself and just go through some of the things that are important to support crew. So obviously there's the day before. You've got to be over there at 3 p.m. for registration. What sort of things do you sort of think about around that time?
Well, I think my approach is always to kind of, you know, support you. So and you know, support your competitor when the other time it's been someone else as well, and just to see what they kind of need. You know, often as competitor, you know, they might be wanting to put their own stickers on the bike and set things up and stuff like that. So I've always found the day before has been pretty relaxing. The thing I would focus on the most is making sure that the kind of the boxes for the next, you know, for the run bike in the morning and then the run after that set up. And so then you've got everything. You don't want to be farting around with that in the morning. You want to have it all nice and set up, you know, the night before. Okay,
the 1 day's a bit different. Obviously it starts at 6 a.m. in the morning, and the 2 day starts at 7. So starting at 6, it must be a really long day, because I mean, we had to get up at like 4 because I'd have to eat. You know, did you get really tired during the day? And
yeah, it's not too bad. There's always something, you know, fun and interesting to watch.
Yeah.
So yeah, no, it's an exciting day, and I think in some ways it's slightly easier than the 2 day. You know, some of the transitions, like the bike to kayak transition, is a little bit easier. I think just the way you know, you can the bikes are dropped off at the top, you walk the kayaks down first, and it's easier to come back up after your competitors left.
Oh, okay.
So no, it's not too tiring. You want to be organised, and I think that's the key for the 1 day. Is to make sure, once again, that you know what's going to go in the kind of the box for the next leg, and that you've got it all ready to go, because you haven't got a kind of a second chance to get organised at the end of, you know, day 1 as you do on the 2 day.
I always perceive that it's moments of frenetic activity followed by long periods of kind of relaxation or boredom or whatever. Is it a bit like that?
Oh, yeah, we spend most of our time kind of suntanning ourselves and, you know, having beers and drinking and, you know. Yeah. No, I mean, there's a bit of that, you know, and there's a lot of fun, you know. But, no, there's a fairly steady pace, you know, particularly on the 1 day, you're just kind of, you know, moving along. On the 2 day, you know, obviously once your competitor's in at the end of the at the end of the run, there's lots of time to sit around and enjoy, you know, a bit of fun and a few beers and what have you. But other than that, you're just generally going. I think the time when you sit around the most would be at the kayak, when you're going down to the end of the kayak transition.
Right.
And that's certainly the stage that I've found we get there the earliest and have the most time up our sleeves, sitting down, you know, on the beach after we've got organised.
Yeah. Okay, so look, there's a couple of questions that have come through, so we're just going to try and address those. Someone's got a good question. Can you tent at the race course in the week leading up to the race for training? You know, I'm really not too sure about that.
I think there's a dock camping ground, you know, nearby, or there's part of that area is a dock camping ground.
Yeah.
But yeah, other than that, I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, there's lots of facilities there. I know, you know, in terms of the toilets and things like that. That's, it might be worth actually emailing the race organisers and talking to them about that through the website, through the Speight's Coast to Coast website. There's another question there. I think it says, my ever-suffering wife is acting as support crew for the 1 day. Are there spare bodies around on the day to give her a hand getting the kayak set up and getting it back to the camper after?
Well,
Chris,
I think
what do you think?
there's, I mean, there's often some great people around ready to jump in and help out. I think the thing to just watch out for is you couldn't guarantee that. So, if you can get somebody else, teed up, probably would help her out. But I mean, there's always people around. There's heaps of people around, and it's a great race. Everyone is willing to lend a hand. I think if she gets held up somewhere, I just remember that you might have to be patient. It is. I think it would be a challenge. I've never done it as a one-person support group, and I think it would add a bit of extra challenge.
Yeah. So have we ever done it with just two people in the one day?
We've always had. I mean, there's normally been two key people. I mean, been myself and Tony, for instance.
Yeah.
And there's always been been two or three extras come along, and a few mates have come down to the end to help out. So, and that when at the end of the kayak's probably a good example.
Yeah.
Where normally me and the other we'll have one person up at the bike ready to get the bike going, and then I'll run up the road with you, and then there's normally somebody else that's come along will take the kayak up and get that loaded up and stuff. And even these days, it's even more helpful to get away from there early because it is a bit of a drive to get back to the end of the race before your competitor gets there.
To some beach.
You've got to go a slightly longer way.
Yeah, actually, that's a really good point because a few years ago, you used to be able to follow the competitor down the old West Coast Road, and I think people used to, I don't know whether you could offer assistance or not, but now you actually have to cross the bridge and head down another way and sort of go, it's like a big procession to Sumner. So because they don't want all their cars going down the same road as the cyclists.
And if you keep moving, there's plenty of time to get there. But I probably wouldn't stop for a latte. Otherwise, you might miss your competitor, crossing the line.
So keep those questions coming. If you've got other questions, feel free to ask them. What else have we got here? Minimum number of support crew. We've covered that. No, there's no more questions. All right, that's good. Okay, so just carrying on with the day. So in the morning, obviously the competitor goes left to the beach and the support crew go right to Aikman's campsite. What do you do when you get there? This is sort of, you're waiting for us at the end of the run, at the end of the first bike ride. What happens then?
Well, it's, as you said earlier, it's an early start. So it's normally a nice chance. Once you've dropped your competitor off, you're going the same way as the traffic.
Yeah.
They get off and chuck their bike in and you carry on driving down the road. And
yeah.
then you get close to the transition area, and there's normally a bit of a queue, wait to get ushered in, and then the first thing we kind of generally do is get the boxes out with the gear for the next transition, so that's always the priority. And then there's normally a chance to sit down and have a cup of tea and entertain ourselves, talking to people that are there and lining up. It used to be a really full-on transition area when it was up near the bridge. There's heaps of space now.
Yeah.
But it was quite funny that one of the very first year we did that there was thousands of people, what felt like thousands of people, crunched in on the road, and when the competitors came through, it was absolutely chaotic.
So that's changed.
That's changed. Yeah. Since now there's heaps of space. You don't need to panic about finding a spot for your competitor to find you. And what we generally do is actually find a spot. I don't like to line up right at the front because sometimes it does get a little bit.
Yeah.
There's a lot of people around. And just find a bit of space a couple of metres back, and then have someone standing out watching for the competitor, and then bring you through to the chair, or we've got the gear or something like that.
I know I used to kind of give you a guide as to how fit I was that year, whether I'd maybe be in the first bunch or the second bunch, or if something happened. And I also remember that we used to say, let's meet at the end of the transition because it was always seemed to be a little less cluttered there. Yeah,
I think definitely meeting at the end of the transition is a good idea. And I think the guide on the fitness, generally the years that you said you weren't that fit were the years you came through the fastest, and we were surprised. So we would just be prepared for whatever eventuality.
I tell you one thing that I always found it really encouraging when I know it's fairly sort of simple thing, but when I'd come through and you guys go, oh, you're going great, and it's amazing how just simple encouragement like that was actually was really useful. So just from the competitor's point of view, quite good. There's another good question there, off the topic from support crews, but is the long sleeve paddling jacket mandatory? Yeah, I guess it is. I actually use a mountain biking top instead of a proper waterproof kayaking jacket, but I guess, you know, the idea is that if you need it, it's very handy. I mean, I don't actually wear one. I always put it in my bag and make sure I've got it. I always take the compulsory gear really seriously. And
yeah, I think it's a really good idea to take that compulsory gear seriously too, because that is from a support crew point of view, that is probably the most critical, group of items to take into the kayak, and they always do really serious checks of them. So you line up, with a whole stack of others, and there'll be some guy there that goes through each of the individual compulsory items to make sure you've got them there. And if you haven't got them there, I've seen heaps of people turn back. So I mean, check the booklet. And, if it says it's mandatory, make sure you've got it packed in so that you guys don't have any problems.
I always used to, as an athlete, always used to kind of be slightly annoyed by all the stuff we had to carry. But last year it came in really handy. I've done 11 races up to that point, and I'd never fallen out of my kayak. And I came out 4 times in an hour and a half due to the huge winds. And I tell you what, if I hadn't had my fleece, I would have got really, really cold, because I spent quite a bit of time in the water. At one stage, I probably spent 10 minutes. I had to swim after my boat, which had sort of taken off. And I wore the fleece all the way to the end of the kayak, which ended up taking me about 2 hours longer than normal. So, I was really glad that I actually had that compulsory gear. So an important tip there.
I think from the weather point of view too, Cal, I mean, the other key weather transition area is probably that end of kayak transition onto the bike.
Oh yeah,
years ago when the bikes used to be a little bit closer, every now on a hot year you heard the odd tyre go pop.
Oh, okay.
So we would take it really seriously when we set your bike up there. We'd always cover the tyres. If the sun was out. If it was a cold, windy day, we wouldn't worry about it, but we'd definitely do that if the sun was out, because that was one of the things that a few people got caught out with, or have been caught out with on hot days.
Okay, so just for the 2-day competitors, things are obviously a little bit slower. Now, for the support crew, when their athlete comes in at the end of the run, obviously they stop for the night. What's important there in terms of looking after the athlete? What's useful? Is there anything you can think of?
Well, I must admit that's probably not my area of expertise. I think probably something where Melissa's stepped up and made sure you've got heaps of food and comfort. But depending on who's in the support crew, I mean, your competitor's going to be really hungry, and they've had a big day out. So hydration and food and rest. If you can help your competitor with those 3 things, I think that's the critical stuff.
Yeah, that's a good point. Okay, so somebody's asked another question. Are there any issues if at any transition? I can't quite read that one.
With theft at any transition. Well, I've never heard of anything like
that. No, I've never heard of anything being taken either.
I mean, we chucked the kayak to bike transition at the end. We turn up, we put the bikes, in the stands. There's a lot of good bikes there, and I've never heard of any going missing personally.
Yeah, it's actually worth mentioning that.
There's normally a couple of cops there as well, probably to direct traffic. But there's also there's heaps of officials around. I wouldn't be too worried. I definitely wouldn't lock your bike up.
Yeah, I know that. I noticed that at the finish of the Speight Coast to Coast, when you get off your bike and run onto the beach, they're taken by handlers there, and you cannot get them until you present your race number. Or your support crew, who also wear bibs, don't they? I mean, you guys get a bib.
You do. You've got to take your bib or some ID along to show you the support crew for that race number to get your bike back. Having said that, if you're worried about your bike at the end, I mean, just go and grab it quickly. I haven't heard of a problem.
Okay, there's another question which asks about, can you explain the process for obtaining a spare bike en route if your bike suffers a catastrophic failure? Actually, that's a really, really good point. Remember, in the first year, I had a bike crash and my bike got kind of quite bent up. I mean, as far as there never used to be, a lot of spare bikes around. I think the last few years, I've seen the odd one, and there's the odd, sponsor that seems to be helping out a little bit in that space. Yeah. I know.
To be fair, I don't know if there is an official process. Probably check the manual. I haven't heard of one.
Yeah.
We normally tend to treat it as if we're kind of on our own.
Yeah, there are bike mechanics there because I've seen them. I know 1 year when I was doing the teams race, I got a flat tyre on the Camara downhill, which is really probably only 30 minutes into the race. And there was a van following our bunch, and within sort of probably 45 seconds of having the flat tyre, they whipped in, gave me a spare wheel, and I met up with them again at lunchtime and sort of we swapped wheels back, and that was absolutely fantastic. So there are support vans that if you're lucky they'll be in your bunch, but it really does pay to know how to change your own tyres, and you just can't guarantee that somebody's going to be there to help you out. So it is quite self-supported, but yeah, it certainly does help if your support crew know what they're doing. I mean, you've always had a lot to do with biking, so we haven't had too many problems there.
Yeah, exactly. And I think that year that you had that bad accident, we had another guy in the support crew who was a bit of a mechanical guru, and Graham, and he helped sort that one out too. But I think that first cycle, there's backup cars, or there's cars following along with bikes on. The second cycle into town, I mean, it's so spread out. I think you'd be kind of lucky to to get an extra bike. Yeah, actually, that's a really good point. Okay, so I think we've just about covered most of the things that we wanted to talk about today. So again, it's really important to read the handbook, to know the equipment, and to read up on the transitions. You can find the handbook if you can. Your competitor's got it if you're a support crew, and it would be really good to make a race plan. And certainly that's an important thing. Make a race plan and have your little boxes or your containers with that you're organising the next leg of the gear into. That's the one big tip I'd suggest to everyone. Okay, so that's a really important thing. Okay, so next webinar is in a few weeks, not till sort of the middle of January. We'll be talking about sort of just tips and tricks for support crews, things that you'll find really useful. And so I just want to thank Speight again and for putting on the webinars. I also want to thank Chris for coming along, taking this time. Chris will probably be back with us in the middle of January. We'll have to talk about that if you're not on holiday. No, thanks for the opportunity. Nice to have a chat about the support crew side of the big race. Yeah, well, it's a great thing. And also, I really want to thank Dave, who comes along and does all the IT stuff for us. Without him, it wouldn't be possible. He sets it all up. Thanks again to Speight. If you've got any questions, please bring them along again next time. I'll just see if there's anything that we can answer. No, that all looks good. All right, we'll close it down. So thanks for watching, and we'll see you again next time.